Dr. Ryan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped to chat. I love I really love seeing all your posts on social media. I share them and yeah, you're an amazing guy, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, honestly, the honor is mine. Like was talking about before we had this conversation. I've been following you since you were Brain Chat, and I've loved the journey and your development. And I always like to start with my podcast is like, can you go like a background of your history and how you even got into the science of neuroplasticity and neurorehabilitation and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, there was just something about me. As a student, as a kid, in school growing up, I was just a very active kid. I enjoyed learning, but I struggled with testing. I never did great. But I always knew that I wanted to have a purpose for what I was doing, what I was studying, and for some reason, I just always wanted to be in a position professionally where I could help people. And it might be a personality thing. I'm not sure what it was that drove me towards it, but I got really interested in just learning how I could get into a profession where I could help serve people. And the reason I say I was a very busy kid is I wasn't the best student. So by the time I really figured it out halfway through my undergrad, I wasn't set up to have the grades for medical school, things like that. And I had a friend who was in chiropractic school, and he told me, "Hey, you should really look into this." So then we had a family friend who had a practice. I went in and shadowed him for a couple of days. Never from a chiropractic background. I didn't really know much about the profession at the time. This was about 15 years ago. And I just really enjoyed like the patient stories, the interactions. Like it seemed like a really fun way to work and to help people overcome whatever they were working through. So got into chiropractic school. I had to take like some extra undergrad courses that I never pursued in undergrad, like organic chemistry, which was brutal for me. Um, but I got through it. And because I'm not from a chiropractic background, when I would ask like what I thought were difficult questions of, like how does this actually work? How does an adjustment change the brain? Because we would hear stories of these magical interactions of where like this person comes in and they couldn't hear correctly and all of a sudden they're hearing, but that just didn't make sense to me because it's like, well, you're not adjusting the ear bones, you're adjusting their neck. So like how does this all connect? And so within the chiropractic profession, there was an advanced certification you can get in functional neurology. It was taught by Dr. Ted Carrick. And I reluctantly went to one of his weekend seminars. One of my like mentors at the time told me that if you actually spent less time like in the gym goofing off and more time studying, you can make something of yourself. Jim Duffy. That stuck with me. So I went and studied some neurology and I found all my answers there. I felt like I now had a purpose in my profession, and it answered a lot of my questions about chiropractic, about how spinal adjustments and changing the way that the brain and body talk to each other can really help heal the brain and change the nervous system. So I pursued that, got my doctorate in chiropractic, and then got my board certification in functional neurology, which I kind of consider like neurorehabilitation. And then I also went and kind of as an offshoot, got my family nurse practitioner degree because I wanted to learn a way to bridge the gap between the two. That's a long, convoluted educational story, kind of in a succinct fashion there.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I think I can relate to. I was not a great student growing up, and once I learned how to learn, it changed everything, the neurology type aspect. And I want to just ask you, what are some like the most rewarding aspects of your profession?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, there's been times where I've like just wanted to stop doing like for example during the pandemic the clinic I was working with the university shut down so I just took nurse practitioner hat on. I'm really interested in orthopedics. It's not simple, but like as a nurse practitioner, working with orthopedic patients it's fun. It's not crazy difficult. So I really enjoyed that. And I was going to stick with that. But one of the guys I work with, Dr. Kyle Daigle, he's in Louisiana. Um, he kind of reminded me of the people that I worked with before and the impact I had. So the reason I love doing what I do is you do get to see some really challenging diagnoses, kind of like off the cuff stuff, where traditional medicine just doesn't have the answer for it. Not to say that, there's not a space for it. It's just that, this isn't a situation where medication is going to get you better. This isn't a situation where some sort of intervention is going to get you better, like some sort of injection or whatever. Like you've got to retrain the brain to help communicate with the body. And that's what kind of keeps me coming back to this. And that's, why I come to work every day. You just get to work with these amazing patients with these amazing stories and just see the brain change in real time. So yeah, I think that's what it is, man.
Totally, yeah, and I can relate. There's a lot of challenges in this space, but it's also incredibly fulfilling and rewarding on the other side of that. Especially seeing some amazing people and how their brain changes. And I know that you're a true proponent of red light therapy. I haven't really dove into red light therapy beyond the surface level stuff. I would love to know like what you've seen and what you've learned in the literature and stuff like that.
Yeah, so with our background, with what we do in the clinic, we're doing everything based on the principles of neuroplasticity. Like we know the brain can change no matter where the brain is at the day that we see the patient. We know we can make a positive change. We just have to find the right way to talk to the brain, to rehab the brain. And I was doing that, and in 2017, one of my colleagues, Dr. Brandon Crawford, presented red light to me, and I was giving him a hard time, like, man, this just looks like a really expensive flashlight. Like, I didn't know anything about photobiomodulation, red light therapy. And he kind of, he just told me, like, just start using it on some of your patients that you're having a hard time with. One young guy in particular, he was a football player, he was a punter. During a game, bent down to pick up a ball that he had fallen. He got hit head on, severe concussion, developed like severe head pains, amongst other concussion symptoms. And we had been working together for several therapy sessions, and we weren't making a lot of gains on the head pain. So I took the red light, I started using it on different spots around the head, and within a couple of sessions, like his pain completely diminished. And he went from a patient where like a cool breeze would set off just horrible pains in his head to where he could now wear a hat. And then eventually he was back to playing football again. So that was kind of the game-changing moment for me where I was like, wow, there's something really behind photobiomodulation, red light therapy, and this is a tool that we can use to help drive those positive neuroplastic pathways, help change the brain, and just help people be a better person with that. So yeah.
That's really amazing that story that you said right there. And I've been fascinated with your work because I've seen certain videos where you're working with a patient, and it almost looks like you were stimulating either one hemisphere of the brain, and it led to pretty remarkable changes. If I remember right, like in their, you were stimulating the right brain, and it was um, activating the left side of their body. Can you kind of speak on some of the things that you've learned through what you've experimented with and tried out?
Yeah. So and this is kind of like, they call it practice for a reason. I'm always trying to figure out novel ways to change the brain, to make our therapies more effective for the patient in a shorter duration. So if people like listening aren't familiar with red light therapy, the way I describe it to everybody is every single cell in our body has a solar panel. Every single cell has a job to do. And within every single cell, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of mitochondria. So when you shine specific colors, strengths, and wavelengths of light on the cells, you can help turn that light energy into cell energy through those cells' solar panels by stimulating the mitochondria. So we use red light on areas of the brain that either show on, we use QEEG scans. So, or, just like areas that we know were impacted from an injury, from a brain injury, from a stroke. We use light on those areas to help try to activate neural networks, improve cell function, improve blood flow, while we're simultaneously doing some sort of physical rehab. I think like the patient you might be reminded of is with a stroke patient, if there's a right hemisphere stroke in a particular area, it can cause left-sided issues. A lot of times, our stroke patients will come in and they've done all the therapy that they've done, but they still have to walk around with an AFO, supportive device for foot drop. So I love working with those patients because I know when you can feed the brain the right types of things, you can start to turn on those neural networks and we'll do like a muscular stimulation to the nerves and muscles responsible for lifting the leg while we're shining light on the area responsible for receiving and sending those motor and sensory signals. And then over time, sometimes within like a short amount of time, you'll see the leg going up and down and then you take everything away and then that pathway's kind of been reestablished and they can do it themselves. So we call it co-activation. There's other methods out there, but we just try to always say, hey, the brain's a sensory sponge. What can we give it so things start to stick?
That's so powerful. I love learning about this stuff, and I'm insanely fascinated by how that works. I don't have a lot of inpatient clients, so more of my stuff is through rewiring the brain through the way that we think to start. That's kind of the input that a new way of thinking about and like the self-talk and all of that stuff. But thanks for sharing that because that's something I aspire to learn more about and you know, give people
That's why I share your posts because I always forget. Like I think a lot of like bottom up, but like your posts remind me of the top down stuff. Like,
yeah,
dude,
yeah.
I love the posts where you're doing like those cerebellar activities for
Yeah,
like
yeah.
prefrontal cortex and like those are amazing for people to do at home. And they really complement what I'm trying to do in the office.
Totally, yeah. And I heard an amazing story by a friend of mine, and he was telling me that his mother was really depressed. She was dealing with neurodegeneration, and this is why it really clicked for me was that at first he got his old mom who was really suffering just to start moving the pinky finger. And then he said, Mom, now that you're doing that, just do this. And mom's like, No, I don't want to do this. Like, stop, leave me alone. He's like, Okay, 5 times. But then, long story short, he had her moving her hands in like very dynamic ways, and then she started walking up and down the hallway, and eventually she kind of knocked herself out of that depression. So I think that explains
Cool.
like the immense power of just starting where we're at.
Heck yeah, man. Like a trickle effect. It's huge, man, because the brain is it's so insanely intelligent but stubborn, and like if all it sees is the finish line and not the tiny, tiny steps that you need to take to get there, yeah, that's incredible, man.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. Like, what a great book that is.
Ah, okay, I
Well,
haven't read that one.
a super solid read. Now I want to kind of like talk about a time that you've faced like some significant setbacks, whether in life or your career, and how you thought through that, turning those setbacks into something positive.
Yeah, gosh, I mean, that's hard to talk about with, meeting when you meet someone like yourself and then
Yeah.
people that I work with because I feel like the things I go through are essentially minor compared to a lot of other people. But I think for me, it's always been just being totally transparent. I go through these waves of like just serious confidence issues. Almost like an imposter syndrome where I wasn't a great student in the beginning until I really found my purpose. I wasn't a very motivated student growing up. I wasn't like a troublemaker or anything. It's just like, hey, if I could go play hockey outside or study, like I'm going to go play hockey. Um, so I think for me, it's almost been you get into these scenarios where you're working with some really challenging patients who have been to everyone. Like sometimes the families will name drop these like top neuro people in the world, and you're like, okay, well, and you came how far to see me? Like, you sure about this? And again, like, there are some cases where we're still trying to figure them out to this day, but I had a conversation. This goes back to a kid that I worked with when I was working with the chiropractic university. They flew in from Alaska. I tried to not get them to come see me. So this kid, he's 16 years old, had a severe concussion on the ice. 2 days later, he completely lost the ability to speak. I've posted about him before. This was in 2017. It was when my first boy was born. So I have this baby. I have a family now. I want to be a father to my child, be someone that he looks up to. But then you also put yourself in the position of the father of this child. Like, if this
Mhm.
was my kid at 16, what would I want for this kid? I want him to see the best, right? So because they were coming from Alaska, I even tried to convince the family to see my buddy. I don't know if you know Jeremy Schmo up in. Uh,
I don't know Jeremy personally, but I love some of the things that I've
he's
seen.
yeah, he's incredibly intelligent. Intelligent, works with these really difficult cases. He was closer for them to travel to. So I tried to talk them in, essentially like talk them into going there. And then one of the ladies I worked with, she was like, "They're coming to see you. I'm going to make it happen. You are the person that's going to help him." And then I was like, all right, get pumped up. I'm the person that's going to help this kid. Like, he had a concussion. He can't speak. I've never seen a case like this before in my life. I've got 7 days to work with them. They've already booked their trip. And then the day of, I was finishing my nurse practitioner rotations, and I was working with the medical doctor who to this day is like, she's our pediatrician, one of my like closest mentors. I told her about this kid, Jesse. I was like, I don't know what to do with this kid. She's like, just do what you know. She's like, you know what people don't know. Not to say you know everything, but you know some stuff. Like, yeah, he's seen some top people in Alaska, but like he hasn't seen you. So just do what you know. And that moment, that was kind of like a game changer for me, just regarding my confidence, the imposter syndrome, like you don't have to know everything, but do what you know and do it with good intention and know that make sure that patient knows that you want to see them progress. And within 4 days, he started speaking. And then now, like, we still talk to this day. Like, their family, I consider us pretty close. Like, he's off to college. He's got a dual major. He's back to playing like rec league athletics, ice hockey, basketball. So for anyone out there listening, like if you want to get into a space or a profession where you're really working to help people to just be a part of their life and to make them, help them change, don't let the confidence kill you because it can, that self-talk, man, it's brutal. Usually when that happens now, I just go out for a run and try to like move my body, move my brain, but it happens, man.
It
That was a
totally
long story,
does.
but
No, thank you for sharing. I think it's so important to realize that you guys like you and me, we're human beings too, and we have our
yeah,
own self-doubts and we have our own self-narrative, and sometimes the mental health aspect is so important because it doesn't matter like how successful you are, like if you don't enjoy yourself or you don't love yourself, like none of that matters. Like you could have $1 billion sitting in the bank and if you hate yourself, like you're just gonna hate more of yourself. So I appreciate
100%.
the transparency.
Yeah, that and like the confidence, like those are big. Just the self-talk, I would say for me, that's always been my setback. But it's gotten a lot better. So
And it's
yeah,
important to realize that like that can change too, because my self-talk
totally.
too was piss poor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Like that's the thing too. Like working in this space, you have to remind yourself like you can change your brain. Like you're not who you are. If you're not where you want to be, you can be somewhere tomorrow by doing this stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome, man. I love it. And now both of us, I think, are pretty geeky about neuroplasticity because the amazing things we've seen in our lives and our experiences. I know that I've seen that you're a fan of Dr. Andrew Huberman, and I am too. But something I want to geek out about real quick is I was reading his podcast, and recently he said one of the biggest lies in the universe, quote unquote, is that seems prominent now is that your every experience you have changes your brain, or that your brain is going to be different by the end of this lecture. And then he went on to explain that changes only occur with diligent focus. So, for my personal opinion, is that Dr. Huberman is wrong because there's something that's called synaptic plasticity, which is the chemical transmutation and signaling changes that do occur. So, I just want to know, I like to get a little controversial from time to time. So, I just want to know, like, what your opinion on that, because I think he is wrong because if you learn something new, there are chemical changes in your brain to start.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I saw that question. I was like, oh man, you want to go up against Huberman? No, so just full
Imposter
disclosure.
syndrome, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, geez. Like full disclosure, I think that that guy is the best thing that happened during the pandemic for me. Like I was doom and gloom, world's gonna die, give up on exercise, give up on life. And then I started listening to him and I was like, oh, thank God he saved me. But then I also just like recently saw that he interviewed or did something with Kim Kardashian. I was like, no, like
No.
he's like now he's like all big and famous, but like those early Huberman days were the best. But you know what too? I think there's something to be said. So I think like what he was really referring to is you're enhancing. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I don't necessarily agree as well because we work with patients who are in a subconscious or a disorders of consciousness state that come out of those states from different types of stimulation. We're trying to change the brain even though they physically or cognitively cannot focus. So I don't think you're taking into appreciation like the subconscious patterns, like some of those primal subconscious abilities of the nervous system that we have that will change the brain with any sensory experience that we engage in, even if you're not focused on it. I know like he talks about how to drive neuroplasticity, there should be intent focus because you enhance the release of things like acetylcholine, which will sprinkle neuroplasticity and all that. And I do understand that. That makes sense to me, but you know, my issue is like you're not working clinically. You don't do active neuro rehab on some of these like crazy cases. So like I don't necessarily agree with that as well because we've seen brains change in kids and adults when they can't focus, they can't concentrate, but we try to feed the brain what it needs. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. And again, like no disrespect, but I just don't. I think there's also a difference. I don't know. He posted something about like talking to kids, and this might be whatever it is, but until you have kids and like, what's in the books versus what's real life is different. So like if you're saying this because it's science and it's from a book versus like the person in front of you, there's a big difference. So yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Totally true. And I think it's knowledge and experience that leads to wisdom. Because if you only read out of a book, you're just going to be book smart. But if you're only going from experience alone and you don't learn from other people, then you can run into some issues as well.
And
Um,
also too, like just on that note, well, I'm just thinking like there's days where I totally zone out and I'll go for a run and I'm not listening to music. I'm not necessarily thinking about anything or focused on anything, but I come back from that and I feel like a completely different person. Like I feel like my brain, my body has changed. Do I
mhm.
know if it actually like physically, structurally, or functionally has? I don't know, but I feel different. And to me, that's a sign of synaptic neuroplasticity, transmission, and change. So yeah, I don't know. I don't agree with that.
Exactly. And I don't agree with it either because by the end of this podcast, my brain did change in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Exactly. Same here, man.
Anyway, much respect to Andrew Huberman. I know he's not going to listen to this anyway, probably at least right now, but
We're gonna tag him 100 times. If he can sit down and
good.
talk to Kim Kardashian, he can at least listen to us.
Yeah, come on, bro. Come on, man. Uh,
Kardashian. Just kidding.
I would love to know, moving forward, as far as the emergence of artificial intelligence, I like to say that there's a lot of bright spots in the future. Definitely, there can definitely be a lot of negative that happens. It is a tool. So I just want to know, like, from a bright, positive, and optimistic standpoint, what do you see as maybe 10 years from now that we can do in the neurorehabilitation space, with that?
Yeah, man, I feel like I feel like things are gonna change like pretty quickly now with some of the like advancements in AI. Um, I'm not, I'm not 100% sure how or when or why, but if something as simple as using light therapy on the brain that I wasn't aware of less than 10 years ago has had a profound impact on me personally and my practice and my patients. Like, I just think it's going to be pretty crazy. I think it's going to be really, like you said, like there's a couple of things where I'm just like, oh man, I don't know about that. It's a little sketchy. But then there's other things that I think are coming out that can really, really help people. One area I'm just really interested in is just the complete, very difficult motor deficits that happen after spinal cord injury or stroke, where no matter what you seem to do, there's no change in the nervous system, at least in that point in time. Like to see where the advancements will go in those directions. And then also in the young kiddos that we work with who have severe brain injuries, and that because of their age, it's an optimal time to change the brain. Like what technology will come out to assist people working in this space to help just provide better care for them. So nothing specific off the top of my head, but it'll be cool, man. I think there's going to be some cool stuff that comes out.
Yeah, and I've had to rewire my own brain around that type of thinking and be more open-minded because it is scary. Let's be honest. Like some of this uncertainty with all of this is a little frightening at times. But if I think if you can just keep an open mind and see what is possible and just be open to it, I think it's a much better place to be for
Yeah,
everybody.
same. Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and I would say you are like one of the true leaders in the neuroplasticity and health space, and I don't say that very lightly. And so I just want to know, like, what is like a daily day in the life look like for you? Like, is becoming the best version of you look like from a neuroplasticity standpoint?
Oh gosh. Okay. Mine is definitely challenging, trying to challenge myself physically and mentally. So whatever feels or seems hard to me, I try to do a little bit of that every day. But a day in the life of, I'm a father of three, so like for me, it's family first always. So just really focused on being the best dad that I can be for my three boys and best husband for my wife. And I'm not perfect for sure. Like if my wife was on here, she would crack so many jokes. But I try to be my best me because, work is busy and I love being at work, but also, at the end of the day, you could be dog tired and then you go home to a very busy household. And then after bedtime, that's when, there's my brain's still running on like concepts, ideas for work, for research, for putting together like a weekend presentation. So really it's just about making sure that I'm consciously where I'm at, because that's the hardest thing for me is like when I'm at work, I'm at work. I'm not goofing around. I'm not like texting a bunch of friends and stuff. When I'm at home and I'm at home, I'm not doing work until everything is settled.
Mhm.
Uh, on top of that, though, I do love like physical activity for me is probably the best thing that I've ever done for my brain. I don't take any medications. I don't yeah, I mean I try to do everything as natural as possible. And what comes naturally to me is to move my body. So I set a goal every year. I do 3 half Ironmans. I still haven't done a full, but swim, bike, and run. I usually do 3 in a year, and then I sprinkle in some like marathons and stuff just to have something to train for so that I'm doing something physical every day. Like no days off. I'm either running, lifting, cycling, or swimming, just to kind of keep my body moving. And then, of course, like I jumped on the bandwagon, started doing cold plunges. I usually do them in the morning before the day starts. I do a 3 minute cold plunge, try to do it around 47 degrees Fahrenheit. And that for me is still challenging. Those have never gotten easier, by the way. I don't know if you've ever done one, but
Oh yeah.
uh, yeah, I
They're brutal. You know, I feel like I'm somewhat of a tough guy, but then I step into a cold plunge and it's
yeah, it's dude, it's nuts. The first time I did it, it was nuts. And still to this day, I feel the cognitive and physical benefits from cold plunging. So that's something that I've incorporated into my everyday life. And then just not to get weird, but I'm really interested in stoicism. So I was raised Catholic. My wife is half Jewish. We're not a super duper religious household, but I found a lot of like very important life lessons learning about stoicism. So, like more of the new age stuff from this author Ryan Holiday, who's in Texas, but he wrote a book called Stillness is the Key,
Mm,
and that was the first book I read about Stoic philosophy. And so I've kind of gone down that path where there's like a daily Stoic book that I read. And for me, it helps kind of keep me grounded, keep me feeling that I'm more level-headed in my approaches because I can also be very emotional. I'm like,
mm.
the team here, they laugh because like I'm kind of like Tigger bouncing around talking and it's hard to like settle down sometimes. And then other
Yeah,
teams like Grumpy Cat, like shut up,
yeah.
quiet, focus on work. So yeah, stoicism is a staple in my life as well. So
That's
cold plunges,
fantastic.
exercises, be present, and stoicism. There you go.
There's a lot of wisdom there in Stoicism and something I'm actually going to explore a little bit more. You know, I have my own uh, I have my own battles with emotional swings and stuff like that. I'm just an emotional guy. I care a lot, and so that sometimes can rub people in the wrong ways, and I lose my groundedness. But let's just talk a little bit before we end this conversation about ADHD. If and I would just want to know, you mentioned that there's a little part of you that has trouble paying attention at times or being present. What do you know about like the ADHD brain?
Yeah. Gosh, man. So I've never been formally diagnosed. In school, like I said, like I enjoy learning. I love learning new stuff. But when it came time for me to sit still in the classroom and study, I had the hardest time. Um, so my parents, when I was in middle school, took me to like whoever was under insurance. I think it was a psychiatrist. And for whatever reason, nothing against medicine, I just told my parents, like, I don't want to be medicated. I don't feel like I need to be medicated. And I didn't tell the psychiatrist that, but she was super cool. And she gave me, it was basically like sensory movement exercises to do before I had to go into the classroom, like between each period, especially before a test.
Hmm.
And so what she taught me was that when you move your body, when you do things that accelerate your heart rate, get the blood flowing, and when you move your body, you stimulate a lot of the different parts of the nervous system that are responsible for inhibition. So like that are responsible for helping you self-regulate and hit the brakes. So for me, my understanding of ADHD and what I think is one of the things at the core of it, outside of, like not eating foods like foods that might be causing inflammation, all that stuff. Allowing kids to be kids and moving their body and being physically active, physically stimulating their bodies, I think will help a lot of the brain area development that is responsible for hitting the brakes. Um, I kind of have a saying with ADHD and ADD nowadays, and I know I sound old saying this, but I believe that the majority of children are overstimulated in the most understimulating ways. So like iPad, just like doom scrolling, Instagram, YouTube, watching kids open GIFs on YouTube, stuff like that. They're stimulated in that sense, but they're understimulated in the physical aspect, so much so that they don't know how to self-regulate and hit the brakes. So yeah, I think it's a faulty brake pattern. And for me, moving the body helped me hit the brakes and help me be a better student.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing, and it's such an important topic these days. Like you said, overstimulation with kids and boosting the reward center completely out of whack with things like TikTok, and so finding that way to help kids self-regulate is like probably the most important question that us as healthcare practitioners can help people do like in the next 20 years, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And like I don't say that lightly. I know that there are kiddos that like medication is going to help for sure, but that if that's not part of it, if that's not part of the plan to help anyone with those symptoms, then you're not doing the most that you could for that person. So I just like to say it because I'm not anti-medicine. I do truly believe there's a place for proper medication, but I also always encourage every single person and patient to ask their provider, what's our exit strategy? Because if you ask a provider that, like most of the times when they prescribe a medication, there's zero exit plan. You're
Yeah.
just on the medication. Well, how long do you take the medication for? For forever. Like, what do you mean? That's not like a, it's just interesting. So yeah, anyways.
I'm totally think similarly, like having been on pretty extensive medications myself, it always just felt like a Band-Aid. Although the medicines I took had severe side effects. And I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole right now. I think what you and I are doing can kind of go beyond that type of thinking. And thanks, first of all, for coming on and I just wanted to mention real quick that I have more of OCD tendencies because you were willing to share about your ADHD tendencies. And I don't diagnose myself, but I know that I do have those OCD-like tendencies, and we all have a little quirk about ourselves. So just want people to know that. And yeah, let's just end it here. How could people reach out to you? Where can they find you? And yeah, find out about all your awesome work that you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, man. And just real quick on that note, I always like to tell people like nobody's perfect. Everybody has something, but like just working every day, like working on being the best version of you is the best thing you could do for yourself and for everybody around you. Like having this, having that, it matters, but it really doesn't matter. Just be you, be your best you, and know that everybody's always, I think we're all at some point in life like struggling somewhere inside, and we're always trying to just work on being our better selves. So
Yeah.
yeah, um I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. Our clinic, we're Neurosolution Center of Atlanta. We have other clinics in Louisiana and Texas. But if anyone ever is interested in chatting, if like my main areas of interest and focus for brain recovery is brain injury rehabilitation, stroke rehabilitation, and then working with kiddos as well. So different types of diagnoses that kiddos have. But we're in Atlanta, Georgia. My Instagram is Dr. Ryan Cedermark. And yeah, I'd be happy to connect with anybody. And I really appreciate you, man. Like I'm pumped that we did this. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, awesome, man. Thank you very much. What an enlightening conversation. And I can't wait to share this with more people. So reach out to Dr. Ryan. You're not going to be disappointed. I'll say that much.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.